Free Palestine needs to be cut out, but someone shouting the N-word doesn't need to be cut out. And the BAFTA goes to the BBC for acting a fool. On Sunday, we saw the BBC allow for the world to hear the uncontrolled outburst of a Tourettes sufferer and a disability activist with a slur, making the audience and the presenters at the time feel very uncomfortable, while at the same time censoring the sincere cry from Akinola Davis Jr. for an end to the genocide in Gaza. Free Palestine. How selective from the BBC? Welcome back to the Northstar Politics Show. This week we'll be discussing that, along with Zia Yusuf, the Muslim at the top of the Reform Party, who's looking for a return to cultural Christianity as he sees it, and a ban on the burqa. We also had a look at the easiest perp walks in history. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson were arrested over the past week, or as they were more importantly known at the times of their alleged abuses, Prince Andrew and Lord Mandelson. We also think it's going to get a bit techie for Nike as people start to realise that there's something insidious about their commercialisation of street culture in London and around the world. All that plus lots more in the show this week. Tap in. One time for the one time, two time for the two time. Welcome home, stars. Dem.
Come on.
You are back tapped in with Northstar Politics, pushing political imagination. Check the compass, you're right where you need to be. The best thing to come out of East London since Brick Lane Bagels.
Jeez.
How about that one? And you know which one you want to be going to, not the one down the, the one up the road that's getting touristified.
Yeah, there you go.
You're of course tapped in with myself, Noah East 9. The Mile and Malcolm X. We didn't land on Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green landed on us. For those of us who didn't understand that one, there was a speech made by Malcolm X. We said we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. But I'm sort of refreshing that one for the East End tone. The little boy from Bo E3. That's playing on some commentary about Messi, the little boy from Rosario. Slimatar Berbatov live in the flesh.
But you're not slim, so explain that one.
That's a little bit of a pun on my favourite footballer, Dimitar Berbatov, one of the best things to come out of Bulgaria ever. John O'Shea Guevara. That's a little bit of a portmanteau between John O'Shea, Republic of Ireland, midfielder / defender for United, brilliant utility man, and of course, Che Guevara. Gallister Campbell, doesn't need to be explained. Different gravy, never lazy. I'm, of course, joined by Sean Ramiz on each and every platform.
They know this already.
They knew that already. The Enfield Eric Williams.
Eric Williams. Do you know who that is?
Well, I do. But tell the people at home who might not know.
The first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in 1962, when Trinidad got its independence.
Big up, big up. Biblical Jesus. Why'd they call you that one?
Because apparently my hair flows and everyone just always comments that I look like the Jesus Christ.
Rory Sluitt.
I do not like that one at all.
Show Salah.
That refers to the Egyptian soccer player, football player for Liverpool.
Half socialist, half socialist.
That's because back in my day, before I reverted to Islam, I could wind my waist.
DreamWorks Moses.
Let my people go.
What are you telling me?
I'm feeling just...
Ramadan spirits high.
Do you know what it is, yeah? Because we started this without iftar, so my head's all delirious right now.
But if you see, the North Star spirit is strong, yeah, because pre-production, our producer Tarek and Sean, they were saying like, oh, should we get... Tarek should come from a long cycle as well. They were saying, do you want to eat? They were saying, nah.
Now, all you need,
We're straight in.
odd number of dates, some coffee.
Literally.
And let's just get a crack in, fam. We got stuff to talk about today.
But we're saying that now, yeah. When this episode just deteriorates into an asylum, then you understand why.
Bro, you're going to just be like me saying... Oh, I hear that still. I hear that. I'll just be so tired. But
We've got a lot to talk about this week.
We do.
Big episode. Give me a recap though. How you been this week? What you been up to?
Well, I've been having late nights, early mornings, fasting. But you know what it is? It's actually so good because when Ramadan comes around, I feel like everyone needs to experience some form of it, as in like just a month where you just lock in to like what you care about. But you really just sort of discover yourself in a way to be able to just achieve a level of discipline you didn't think was possible. So I'm starting every morning, doing my reading, reflections and thing. That's why I like all this month, yeah, it's a spiritual takes from me. Esoteric. But other than that, it's been good, man.
I heard you in the crowd at the BAFTAs on Sunday night. Was that not? We're not saying that? No, we'll leave that. We'll talk about that one later. We'll talk about the BAFTAs later.
Oh, gosh. That was crazy, though. That was actually mental.
But you've been good.
Yeah, man, I'm good. How about you?
No, I've been good, man.
What have you been up to?
Been good last week. I got back to running.
Is it?
You know what? One thing we talked about last week, people don't realise how close me and Sean are, so you actually know everything I've been up to. He knows everything I've been up to, yeah. But people that don't know, like I've been dealing with like an Achilles injury for the past couple of years on and off. And eventually in like November, I was like, let me just actually sort this because it was just coming back all the time. So I followed a physio plan, and you know me, it's hard to get me off like the cardio.
Yeah.
So I was following this physio plan, strict. Had me doing like hopping in the gym.
That's another niche we have: longevity and athletic training.
Yeah, come on.
Knees over toes. Shout out to the boss.
Come on. But then last week was the first time in like 4 months I've been able to just go for a run. Started at 10 minutes, built up to like 25 minutes today.
Oh, but you were putting up them times for like 2K, 3K when you weren't even injured. So like, what's going on?
Impossible. But as in, I'm getting there now. Where it's hopefully that'll be a big summer running season.
No, that's good. You know what? Today as well, on the day of filming, it felt like spring vibes.
Yeah,
it feels like things are just awakening up right now. Ramadan's here, Lent's here.
No, exactly.
It's a good time to be alive, man. Alhamdulillah.
Should we get into the state of play?
Let's do it, man.
Let's get into it. Welcome to the state of play. For our new listeners, we're laughing behind camera because it's episode 20 and we finally explained some of the intro lines. But for our new listeners, the state of play is where we deal with the main topics that have come up this week. We've got a bit of an international flavour this week because obviously there is some craziness happening around the world. But we're going to start at home in good old Blighty, where people would have seen Lord Mandelson, former Lord Mandelson, who stepped down recently, having come up in the Epstein files for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, the notorious paedophile and sexual offender, was arrested last week on suspicion of misconduct in public office. A few days later, Andrew Mountbatten, formerly Prince Andrew, and quite importantly, Prince Andrew at the time when he committed these crimes, was also arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. These are both to do with confidential materials shared with Epstein as trade envoys and in his post of various different posts that Peter Mandelson's held over the years. And after the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the King said, to quote, "Law must take its course."
Real.
It is interesting because this is the first time, in the case of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, this is the first time in modern history that a member of the royal family has been arrested. So it does set a little bit of a new precedent or show that it's been taken.
And definitely not the first time a royal member has sort of broken the law.
Done sort of nonsense. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Craziness. Yeah.
But it's interesting because a lot of people were sort of outraged, like, well, these guys are clearly wrong-uns in the sense of sort of sexual assaulters allegedly, but they're being arrested for misconduct in public office. But I think it's important to recognise that the police is also an institution, or the judicial courts are an institution that has to fulfil a certain role. So they need to do the thing they have the most evidence for.
Yeah, and also it's important to know that just the way the system of law works is that people have to bring a case forward and you need to have sufficient evidence for the particular thing they're being accused of. And so it's, like you said, there's sort of institutional, I guess, barriers to that is that if there were some sort of individuals who were just like actually harmed by these people in any meaningful way, like they might have the experience, but they might not have enough evidence to come forward, etc. So it needs a sort of coordinating force and coordinating body, which obviously happened in America, which is why all these files got captured and released in the first place. But we just have to basically wait and see. Yeah. I think the thing that's really annoying though is that there is a lot of deafening silence from a lot of like the key players who've kind of brushed shoulders with these types. So, you know, the royal family is very hush-hush about it. They just say, just leave it to the police. Even basically what you tried to touch on and be a bit more explicit about is that we should probably still call him Prince Andrew because it actually conveys some sort of complicity with the royal family, because there's no doubt and there is evidence that when Queen Elizabeth was alive, she tried to cover up his crimes.
In fact, I think with the payoff that was awarded to one of the victims of Prince Andrew was funded by Queen Elizabeth at the time.
Yeah, and how much of their wealth is basically funneled through taxpayers.
Right? Exactly.
That's what I mean.
A taxpayer. Yeah. I think as well, like when people talk about the confidential material that was shared, if you remember back to the Epstein file episode we did with Lord Mandelson, that will refer to him releasing to Jeffrey Epstein, literally forwarding him emails about when Gordon Brown was going to resign, when they were going to make certain market-sensitive decisions. And with Prince Andrew, this was when Prince Andrew was a trade envoy, which is actually an unfunded role. Like, you don't actually have a salary for it, but you get expenses, but you're also privy to market-sensitive information.
And also, even like with these kind of like roles where you don't actually get paid for, what they get is the clout, the connections, the networking. That's actually what we really saw with the Epstein files, is that this kind of network has been leveraged to do a lot of nonsense behind the scenes.
I want to ask you a question, and it's about the royals and like the elites, because you back in the day you did a really good video on your TikTok where you went. It was about the coronation.
Yeah.
And you went to go see some
Queen's Death back in the day as well.
And you went to go see like some royalists, like the people that were out there queuing with the bunting and everything. What's your perspective on the British temperament towards royals and whether this could be a bit of a sea change with regards to that?
Yeah, I think there's been a sort of chronic under investment, if you want to call it that, in British culture, which has made it quite ripe for the likes of reform to come forward and sort of lead the charge with some sort of nostalgic return back to like a Britain that once was rooted in sort of Christian values or something like that, and some sort of like real patriotic values. And so the royals, they, for many kind of British people, did occupy some sort of, and still do to some extent, some sort of special, I guess, nostalgic history that people can kind of bind themselves around and like have some sort of meaningful social fabric. You know, that actually the royals themselves are like an identity, a symbol that they can look up to, and people once a year or however many kind of times a year there's like a royal event can come together,
project their identity onto it.
Yeah, and you know what it is, I was there to take the piss, obviously. If people go back and watch those videos, I did take the piss. But I did come away feeling that, okay, obviously this is absurd, but it's kind of sad that like British culture has become so vapid that there's nothing to really cling on to but some nostalgic memory of the royal family. So then
it's even a memory of a memory.
If
it's always nostalgia, there's actually nothing like at the bottom of that pit.
And also those people probably would have been the peasants, not like
exactly.
not meaningfully connected to like the elite royals back in the day. So I felt kind of sad because obviously I was taking the piss out of it. So then now in terms of what does this do or mean for the royal family, to be honest, I think it's been on a downward decline since Elizabeth died anyways, because let's be real, innit, Prince Charles ain't even got the aura to kind of like...
Man, don't recognise Charles.
That's what I'm saying. So I think we're seeing the beginning of the end. But I think what people like to gloss over, especially like when they're anti-royal, because we're both anti-royal, is that, you know, we do have to recognise the valuable role it does play in engendering a sort of social fabric. Not to say that we can't criticise it, but what would replace it is my question.
So I was about to say,
Yeah.
I think, you know, the argument oftentimes for the royals, because people are aware, like the economic argument falls away. Like people still go visit the Palace of Versailles. Like the argument from politics obviously was won years and years ago with the Glorious Reformation. But I would put forward this argument against people who would say, but it's a unifying sense of British culture. What could be more unifying as a sense of British culture than being the generation who had the constitutional moment where we deposed the monarchy and got rid of the weak-chinned weirdos?
Yeah.
I think that's what we should build a political identity around as British people.
I mean, I would love that. It just depends on who's willing to basically articulate that. Because, like, as we say,
Northstar politics. We're here we will lead the charge of anti-monarchy.
But that's the thing. It's always like top down, and it's quite interesting that the reforms and these types of characters are probably a bit. Well, right now they're very ambiguous and ambivalent on where they lie.
You know what? That's something interesting. Yeah, sorry to even. We'll keep back on. We're going to tangent again, but
that's okay.
When we were working for Entire Hamlets on some political campaigns, and I went out there like walking around. Yeah. I went to like all the pubs in the wards that we were looking at to basically try and get an idea for really the white working class in Entire Hamlets and what their sentiments were. I remember sat with this woman in a pub off Commercial Road, and I was asking her, old lady. And I was asking her, like, what's your number one concern when it comes to politics? And me with like sort of my like prejudiced eyes, I was thinking she's going to say like immigration or the Bengalis or whatever. She was like, the royals.
Really?
And I'm just like, I was so confused. But I think there's like quite a working class, I guess there's a divide within the working class, those people who are really tied towards like, aspiration and meritocracy, who just see like the royals over and over again as like a thorn in the side of that ideology.
Yeah.
So I think there is an opportunity here, but I guess also it's like people don't care enough. There's apathy around this.
Yeah.
They're not important enough for people to care.
No, it's an interesting one. I don't know how it's going to fall. I would probably lean to the fact that the royals have basically undone their own credibility with this. So we'll see. We'll wait and see.
But yeah, as regards Peter Mandelson and the former Prince Andrew, we're going to have to wait and see.
Lord Mandelson and
Prince Andrew. We're going to have to wait and see how the case progresses. But those are the updates. They both have been arrested. Pretty chill perp walks, I must say. Yeah. As someone who grew up in London, to see man hold chase from police down Chatsworth Road, all these sorts of things. That was a pretty chill perp walk for those people. But I guess that's what you get when you are friends with one of the most notorious paedophiles of all time.
For sure. The way I've seen some nonsense as well. Just literally school kids getting dashed around.
Exactly.
And this happens. But yeah.
Do you want to take the next topic?
Yeah, go on then. Speaking of reform, Zia Yusuf, the Muslim in charge of reform, scary settings, says reform will restore Britain's Christian heritage. He says that Britain's Christian values are at risk of mass immigration of people from low-trust societies. So these include Pakistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Syria, Afghanistan and Sudan. He's basically naming...
Big up the team.
Yeah, words. He's naming all the mandem, really. Yeah. So he has also pledged to basically impose a blanket visa ban on diplomats, VIPs, workers, students, tourists, if those countries refuse to take back deported illegal migrants and criminals. He wants to also renegotiate a deal with the EU to enable the Reform Party to ban foreign nationals, including EU citizens, with settled UK status from claiming welfare benefits. So even the EU lot are getting it as well. He also actually pledged to further commit the Reform Party to grant listed status to all 40,000 churches in England and Wales to prevent their conversion into mosques or other places of worship. Obviously, he's highlighting the mosque part. And has pledged to mandate automatic home searches for anyone referred to prevent counter-terrorism. Also, on top of that, he wants to have a vast expansion of stop and search powers and saturation policing in high crime areas. So basically put more police. And of course, he wants to ban the burqa. Noah, are you excited to live in a reform-ran country?
I think there's a phenomenal example of a new thing I might call religious cuckoldry.
Okay.
Could we use that term?
Unpack it. Yeah, go on then.
Because Zia Yusuf is like, brother, we get it. We get it. You're loving off the Christian. You want, please.
But when do you think he's going to convert to Christianity? That's the question. That's going to happen. But when?
But you know what it is, the Christians you're appealing to with this kind of dogma, because I was raised Christian, I was raised Catholic. The Christians you're appealing to are not the ones that want you, Zia. They're not the ones that are really living like Christ with this kind of stuff. One thing I will say,
go on then.
The policy around imposing a blanket visa ban on countries that refuse to take back deported illegal migrants and criminals, I'm hearing that.
Well, the thing is, I think they tried to do it, or he tried to suggest it with the kind of Pakistan grooming gangs, but many of these Pakistanis were actually born and raised here.
That's different, as in like, I think the legislation around who can be deported is something they shouldn't try and fiddle with.
I know, but they will though. That's
a separate point. I think the policy of like leveraging like our ability to deport back to a country if someone is illegally here from your country, I think that's fine. I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, in principle,
obviously, I would question their intentions here, but just to be clear on like the material stuff, like, I'm not someone who's going to retort reform policy by just saying, "Oh, I allow all the immigrants in." Like, I think there is a discussion to be had here. But I think like the substantive element of here is just Zia Yusuf again with like the very very lowly disguised dog whistle of the Muslims are taking over and. Please, like my white Christian overlords, accept me into your ranks as I try and deter them.
But I feel like people can't really see the irony of the fact that this is a Muslim man, or supposedly a Muslim man, who's basically running the reform policy. That's why I think obviously in the cards is basically a kind of Christian conversion as part of his story. But listen, all I'm saying is, for the old school Northstarers, or the stars them, couple weeks back, I did a Let Me Land, the rise of political Christianity is going to undo the West. I feel like we're seeing the kind of the crumbs right now, especially when you see like in America, led by J.D. Vance, etc. J.D. Vance exposing his wife for being some weird Hindu to the American masses to win the kind of Christian support. Now we're seeing this. I think, honestly, and I actually think one of our guests, we always shout her out because she's such a sick guest, Besiah Twins would agree, is that Christians need to speak up about this. You know? Not in a way it's like, oh, look at your people, what are you doing? But rather like, I think from a Muslim perspective, I think it's very important for Muslims to call out like terrorism, extremism, etc. This kind of like, I think, perversion of Christianity in this very degenerate form that they're trying to kind of put forward. I think we need actual real kind of Christian voices to step forward and talk against it.
For me, something me and you talk about quite a lot is like examples in my family of Catholics who are really live that Catholic life.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'm just so convinced of now is that anything labelled under cultural Christianity is just nonsense.
Yeah, dog whistle.
It's just nonsense because the actual practice of Christianity is oftentimes so at loggerheads with what cultural Christians will try and promote. And I think people at home will understand that if you're in communion with anyone who is like a serious Christian or of the Christian faith, they will not recognize these as being in any way important
or even problematic.
Yeah.
Because I think the critical juncture for when I started even thinking about this was actually when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, and then you saw the outburst of Christians basically try, I guess, remember him or commemorate him for being basically a Christian martyr. And I mean, not to even get more theological, it's because within Christianity, there's obviously the famous saying of like, render unto Caesar what is his. And so like a lot of Christians actually think their Christian faith is a very personal, private thing that can't really interfere with the secular realm. Hence why we have a very kind of secular society now, because it comes from those Christian roots. And so I do wonder how to basically get more, I suppose, left-wing Christian voices or more Christian voices who are geared towards justice. And one can't deny there's also a racialized element to this, because we have a lot of Eritrean and Ethiopian Christian friends who, if we spoke to them about this, they'll be this is not proper Christianity.
I think
it's very difficult.
But also, I think there is a different, and maybe we could bring like a few different people from different Christian creeds on here to talk about this. But I think there is fundamentally a different in politics flowing downstream from like Catholicism or like Eastern Orthodox, which would be what you'd assume maybe like Habesha friends would fall into, versus like Protestant Christianity and like evangelical Christianity. I think there is very different political downstreams.
Yeah, where right now it's just become. I remember I got cooked on a Elliot Buick podcast because I basically said, maybe this can be a let me land for a future episode, but Judeo-Christian morality is kind of vapid because actually it's always defined through like a sort of binary oppositional lens, i.e. saying it's just not Islam, it's not these things. And so I think this is basically just an example of it, because they're going to invoke...
But I would agree with that, but I'd say if you change that take to be like cultural Christianity...
Oh, yeah, of course.
If you think cultural Christianity, like logically flows from someone who's like, well, I'm not Christian, but I'm not loving these Muslims. Therefore, like I'm going to develop this idea, like this identity of cultural Christianity.
Yeah, well... We'll wait and see.
Burqa ban would be crazy though.
Yeah, well, I mean, we obviously pro the face covering ban. For like the delinquents in London who just trying to steal my phone all the time. But the burqa ban, I mean, yeah, that is just basically targeted hatred, isn't it?
No, definitely. And I don't know, maybe Zia Yusuf will see this story as a bit of a warning cry, but we'll talk about the Taliban. We'll talk about the Taliban.
Bro, there's no problem with Islam. Stop. We know what the agenda of Northstar is.
But so there's been some interesting developments going on in Afghanistan.
Go ahead.
The big headline one that would have caught a lot of like media and cultural news lines was there's been a new 90-page criminal code passed down from the Taliban regime that includes the sort of the headline scandal is that it endorses domestic abuse or domestic violence as long as, quote, it doesn't cause broken bones or open wounds. So this is why I want to get your thoughts on that, and that's kind of caught the imagination of a lot of people online. But I think it's also worth adding in that there's more substantive tensions rising in Afghanistan along the border of Pakistan. Over the past year, 3 million people have been deported back to Afghanistan from Pakistan and Iran, doubling the population of some border cities. And there's also been increasing tensions within the past month. There's been 70 soldiers killed by Pakistani forces in border air attacks targeting dissident militants. So there was terrorist bombings in Islamabad against sort of Shia mosques by supposed or alleged Afghan terrorists. And then in response to that, Pakistan has really cracked down along its border where they think there's certain encampments of these terrorist groups or militant groups. So I guess there's 3 stories there. One about like the resettlement of deportees or resettlement of displaced people to Afghanistan, increasing tensions with Pakistan, but then also the, let's say, tightening of civic control on sort of social expression by the Taliban.
Yeah. I think we'll start with the first, I guess. So like this resettlement point, there seems to be a very growing and concerning trend that countries can basically just deport and get rid of political problems, i.e. of what they perceive to be a population that they don't want back to a home country, and everything will be solved. And I think that basically is quite fallacious, because it sort of assumes that our global problems aren't interconnected. And so if you're basically just pushing away or deporting a bunch of people away from your borders, and you think that's just going to solve everything magically, it just won't, because somewhere down the line there'll be another political problem that has the ramifications and domino effects to basically be your problem again. So I think it is a weird... it's definitely a weird trend. It's definitely symptomatic of this kind of rising nationalism that we're seeing.
So I agree with what you're saying, but I also think that, you know, the advent of the UN and the UN's principles, and even that idea of like the sovereign individual.
Yeah.
And even if you think about like Article 5 in the UN, that you can intervene in other countries based on like war crimes against individuals. I think we're losing that as we see like the degradation of US hegemony. So when we look at instances, and we're going to go on to talk about the UN report on Sudan.
Well, the US hegemony not like taking it seriously
anymore.
Exactly,
not supporting these same ideals. I think we're losing that, such that what we're going to see is a resurgence in the nation state. So like morality doesn't flow beyond our borders. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the relativity of that, such that people within, like, let's say Pakistan or within Iran, come into a new era where they no longer see it as a problem to just be deporting humans to a potentially authoritarian, totalitarian state, because we've lost that sense of humanism, we could say.
Yeah. As in even sort of seeing the kind of sanctity or dignity of anyone who's not part of your tribe.
It's sort of the underpinnings of the universality of human rights. You see in the UK when it's like, let's get rid of ECHR so that we can shoot down boats across the channel.
Yeah. And not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, even though we've got the allegations already, so why not? But obviously, where was that kind of worldview outlined in something that we basically spoke about a whole episode?
Oh, Epstein files.
Exactly,
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Okay.
So even
I was trying to look all the way back.
No, but like it's
Yeah.
back. So even Epstein himself. So
Yeah.
the fact that these elites, these global elites, was trying to basically manufacture or impose the sort of architecture for this new world order, and we're seeing it play out in real time.
Yeah.
One has to wonder, did they just basically win? You know?
And even there's something we speak about a lot, and we want to talk about more. And it's also something that I'm slowly writing about, which will probably come out on Northstar. But like a lot of what underpins this is a tension between community and atomization.
Yeah.
And oftentimes those they could seem like wishy-washy. And atomization is basically just the separation of individuals from their community, economically, socially, whatever. And oftentimes these can seem as just like weird, wishy-washy, theoretical, sociological words. But in fact, they really are. It really is like the fundamentals of power in our modern world. And when we atomize people from community, you're able to basically have them not beholden to their fellow human, but beholden to corporations, beholden to regimes, beholden to whatever it might be, certain piece of technology. And I think a lot of what we document on Northstar is downstream of the atomization of humans.
Yeah. And these very pervasive meta-narratives, which is something that we also speak about, which is the idea that we humans understand the world and complex processes through stories. I mean, there's a reason why most of the great religious traditions all are basically just a bunch of stories put together that sort of engenders such a strong belief in the way and a perspective and understanding the world. And it's very interesting that when you like just hop between these countries, all of them have a prevailing meta-narrative, which is like in our sort of Western kind of UK, US, it's this kind of invasion of like the kind of Muslim other that we need to crack down, return to our Christian roots. In India, Pakistan, in all these countries, they're going to have a prevailing meta-narrative, which there's a sort of global trend where it is really just posing the kind of native population against this insurgent other.
Yeah, and I think, how much is that baked into just...
What human psychology, the way humans are.
Because we probably spoke about this years ago, but I've always had this theory of like the chosen people narrative.
Yeah.
Like every successful civilization needs a chosen people narrative. There's a reason why stuff is written in Greek and Latin in the United States. When there's no real link between the United States and like ancient Rome, but they want to have this sense of US exceptionalism flowing downstream from like logical exceptionalism from the Roman states. Even if you think about Virgil's Aeneid, well, obviously, maybe you don't think about Virgil's Aeneid.
I do not think about Virgil's Aeneid, but yeah, carry on.
Even like Virgil's Aeneid was kind of written as a laudative of the current regime to basically say we are the descendants of ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And there's I mean, maybe it's book 8 of the Aeneid, maybe the stars don't at home who care about this will love this. I think it's book 8 of the Aeneid where Aeneas is walking around what will go on to become Rome, and they're sort of foreshadowing of what will be like the new city of Rome at the time and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the chosen people narrative, it keeps on coming up time and time again in conflict with whatever ideas we might have of like a global community, of like humanism, of international liberalism.
Yeah, like it's all universalism, right?
Yeah.
That we sort of advocate for. No, I think it's true. I think it actually, again, well, I see the world in a very spiritual lens anyways. And the Islamic tradition would say is that there's some sort of like animalistic nature in all of us that we basically need to resist, where it allows us to buy into this notion of like a very tribal identity.
Yeah. What does the Islamic tradition say about the Taliban saying that you can domestically abuse your wife as long as it doesn't cause broken bones or open wounds?
What do you think it says? You've watched enough Speaker's Corner to know.
Yeah, but you know, you Let Me Land last week. One of the big retorts in the comments, so Sean did Let Me Land last week, where he said that Islam has the greatest potential to be anti-racist out of any sort of world ideology.
Yeah.
And one of the big comments was about sexism.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting for you to try and untangle sort of the implications of this and how that relates to Islam, because that's what it's going to be framed as, especially in British politics.
Well, the strand of Taliban Islamism, if you want to call it that, is a very modern strand. It has no rooting in any traditional orthodoxy, no sort of scholarly background. There might be one or two scholars who were very fringe at the time, back when they were writing, all the way back in the day. So for the Muslims at home, they might know the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a very popular scholar right now. And in his time, put it this way, the kind of scholar clergy thought that this guy was crazy, lock him up, throw away the key. But over time, because of various political reasons, and I'm giving such a reductive, simplistic take of this, right? His works were revived with the rise of Saudi Arabia and Ibn Saud, so the modern kind of family who founded Saudi Arabia, overtook it from the Ottomans. They revived this new kind of strand of Islam. And from there is like a sort of offshoot and a breaking of a very kind of harsh, restrictive form, which for a lot of political reasons and sociological reasons, right? They're fighting against the onset of colonialism. It's a very kind of aggressive strand of Islam. And so it's popularized really only in the 20th century. But because a lot of us like modern people, as we sit in sort of post-modernity, we have like some sort of amnesia, right? We only can really think back to that time and can't think back before. And so we take these very modern forms of Islam and basically, I guess, retrospectively portray it as like this kind of true Islam that we're seeing now. And it's a big problem. A lot of scholars talk about this now. There's such a global, even now, right? So we're talking like 2026, there's actually such a global stance against the Taliban as well. So even though they actually, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Taliban, they actually all have some sort of similar Islamic root and this kind of modern inversion of Islamic ideals. Even now, like Saudi and all these other countries will actually very explicitly argue against what they're actually portraying. And so it is just really sad to see like any worldview can be distorted by very degenerate forms. And this is one of them. Obviously, the sexism point now... Sorry, my throat is still dry from all the fasting. But the sexism point, I think, it is really heartbreaking to see because there is such a strong tradition in Islam for having its own sort of empowerment of women, right? So the prophets and the prophet's wives were all very like respected leaders, business leaders, high-ranking officials in like the army, scholars, etc. The first university in the world was founded by a Muslim woman, right? And so like to see how over time these things unravel is quite sad, really. And I think any of like these kind of new modern Muslims, especially like modern male Muslims who have some sort of adventurous strand that they want to go visit Afghanistan, because you've seen the rise of like influencers and stuff who think they should just do that. I think that's just a disgusting thing to do, to even try to validate or normalize what the Taliban are actually doing to women there.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything to be said about, and there's maybe not playing devil's advocate, but just putting forward like what would be a retort to that?
Okay.
Do you think there's anything to be said about the susceptibility of Islam in producing these, let's say, institutionally sexist regimes? Because there's a lot of like sexism in the West, definitely in democracies, in Western liberal democracies, and a lot of times it's not actually legislated for, or it doesn't fall under a legislative umbrella in the sense of the amount of undocumented rapes or rapes that go unprosecuted. Do you think there is some susceptibility within Islam, or why do we maybe that pattern's wrong, you tell me that's wrong, but why does it feel like there's a pattern of, let's say, institutional misogyny in these Islamic states?
I think it flows from the fact that, sorry, my voices keep going. No, so just to start off, no.
Okay.
I think in the modern day, there obviously is some sort of observation around how these kind of modern, very degenerate forms of Islam and these modern states obviously have a problem with women. I think the disconnect, though, why that might not sound particularly convincing to people, is that Islam also does traditionally have a very different paradigm of gender norms and an understanding of gender, which in many ways, even taken at its best form, might actually still seem quite oppressive to a lot of people who observe things through a Western kind of paradigm, which is understandable, right? Like even the fact that some girls have to wear hijab, for example, is seen as oppressive, right? So at the very simple
level. So
level.
it's a bit of like relative to Western norms, yes.
Definitely, yeah. Relative to Western norms, there's some sort of like, one can definitely rationalize that. It does seem a bit more oppressive, but I would just point to like the countries of Malaysia and Indonesia, very large democracies, who've had female prime ministers before, presidents, etc., where these are very strong Muslim countries, and there's a lot of female empowerment there. I
think we'll keep coming back to this kind of topic naturally because Islam's not going anywhere. So, but
unfortunately for some, fortunately for others.
Should we keep moving on the state of play? I think we've got one more topic that I wanted to cover before we hit the back roads. So there was a UN report regarding the conflict in Sudan. And this came out last week. Essentially what it said was that the RSF, which is the Rapid Support Forces, has probable cause of having been involved in war crimes. So people remember a couple months ago, we on Northstar documented the El Fasher genocide, essentially, where the city of El Fasher was taken by the RSF and a months-long siege came to a close. And what the UN report documents is that there was 6,000 people killed in 3 days in El Fasher. And a particular incident, which is one of the examples of sort of clear and explicit war crimes, is that the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, opened fire on at least 1,000 people sheltering in the university. I think that's quite important to bring to people's attention, to keep Sudan in people's minds, but also to be aware of the fact that here's something that is serious and is horrific, but also an awareness there of people to understand that here's the kind of thing that is going undocumented, while the more trivial stuff is hitting your headlines every single day. There's not much to back and forth on that. Slight circle back I wanted to do as well to remind people on the Taliban thing is it's another example again of you're going to see the US and British and Western media talking about, the Taliban is terrible and taking quite a moral stance. These people don't care about morals because obviously in the 1980s it was the US who armed the Taliban.
Yeah, of course. The CIA funded it, right?
You basically created the Taliban to oppose Soviet forces in Afghanistan. But yeah, so just to reiterate there, the RSF is basically conclusive evidence of war crimes going on, which is no surprise to anyone here at Northstar or the Stars Dem at home, but the UN has reported that and there is more documented evidence there. Should we leave it there for the state of play?
Yeah, let's leave it there.
Let's get into the backroads.
Let's do it. Welcome back to the Backroads, where we're going to talk about some stories or give us a perspective on stories that you might not have heard of, even though our second Backroad story is something that people have heard of. Right. But this first one, no, it's actually our favourite topics. It's about Islam and landlords.
Come on.
This one was made for us, right? So cool. There's a billionaire Muslim landlord known for funding London's Ramadan lights and pledging to tackle homelessness, and who is now overseeing mass evictions of hundreds of private renters across London. He's also known as a big name in philanthropy. So his name is Asif Aziz, right? And through his company Criterion Capital, he has actually issued the Section 21 no-fault eviction notices to residents in multiple buildings across London. So some people might have heard these buildings. So there's a place called Delta Point. Residents estimate up to 200 flats are affected. Right. Britannia Point, hundreds of tenants receive letters giving them 2 months' notice. Tenants say they're evicted. They're being evicted despite of being up to date on rent, so nothing's really going wrong. One resident is even saying that they've lived in the building for 7 years, paying £1,900 a month.
Wait.
Merton Council also says it actually previously spent £3 million on emergency scaffolding and repairs at Britannia Point, so one of these buildings, after a pane of glass fell from the 12th floor and 69 windows were found to need replacement. And the money, the council claims, was actually never repaid by Criterion Capital. And all of this is happening or being carried out before the government's forthcoming Renters' Rights Act, which we spoke about earlier, so go watch that, in previous episodes, which is expected to restrict so-called no-fault evictions. And basically the controversy is around how this landlord, and Asif Aziz, right, so he's a huge name in the Muslim community.
Is he the guy that turned the hotel in London into a mosque? We didn't let him pray there.
I think so, yeah.
Is he that guy? Okay.
Yeah. Or I don't know if he was always going to build like a prayer thing there anyways. So he runs the Aziz Foundation, which is like a huge kind of scholarship program for British Muslims.
Yeah.
But look, this landlord who's publicly associated with community philanthropy and tackling homelessness is basically just making hundreds of renters in London practically homeless.
Yeah, I mean, classic story again about how the profit motive isn't aligned with the good
Yeah.
that we speak about all the time on here, and it's no-fault evictions are insane. I think again, kind of relating to the Epstein file stuff and stuff we've spoken about over the past few weeks, is that it's not only your democratic rights that are important in terms of power and your ability to enact your positive freedoms within society. It also included is your relative power, with respect to other people in society. So if someone is so powerful as to be able to evict you within 2 months with no problem, no notice, and to make you homeless within a rental climate where there is really no alternative apart from paying exorbitant rates within London, that clearly isn't a functioning democracy. No. You might all have the vote, but you don't all have the right to a home. You don't all have the ability for an alternative living space that doesn't cost you £1,900 a month for a shoebox in London.
And I think it's one of the big pitfalls of free market capitalism as we practice it. It's become so normalized because the question actually becomes, how do you actually hold these types of people to account? Because within the sort of moral framework engendered by neoliberalism, they're just playing the game. Yeah, they're just doing it.
But they're actually doing what is demanded of them.
What you're meant to do.
When we talk about financial totalitarianism, it's like if there was a subsection of society's housing stock that was owned by the government that offered an alternative to people if they were in this sort of situation, then that would always be looked upon by obviously Margaret Thatcher and the neoliberal hawks as an untapped pool of GDP, an untapped pool of economic activity. So within the rationale of capitalism, within the rationale of free market capitalism, this is fine. This is what's meant to happen.
It's very normal.
But obviously, what we should be encouraging people at home, the stars, to be thinking about is is this conducive to my own rationale? should this be the mental framework or the cognitive framework within which I function?
Yeah, and I think so. Shout out to London Centric for actually breaking the story there. Actually, they have a great Substack. But I think, especially in the time of Ramadan, Muslims who engage with the Aziz Foundation or Asif Aziz, I'm not saying necessarily boycott or do anything like that, but I'm just saying just be really intentional about where you're putting your support. Because if we actually think about ways to hold billionaires to account, well, this businessman, the best way to hold him to account is basically just not engage with his business. So yeah, we'll monitor that. And shout out to one of the stars that actually sent this article in. Obviously I won't bait her out just in case, or whoever it is, but yeah.
Nah, big up yourself, bro. The BAFTA goes to the BBC for acting a fool. So people might have seen over the weekend, obviously I'm assuming none of the stars then watch the BAFTAs. No one watches these things, by the way. Just to put it out there, like this is.
I've never.
Exactly. These are self-congratulatory, masturbatory events for the film and TV elite.
But relax before Northstar gets a BAFTA one day before we turn up in it.
Bro, they don't want to demand them on stage. You don't want Northstar on stage because the things we'll say, they will censor that in their ass.
Bro, like, there's no wonder we just haven't got a sponsor yet. Like, just because we just be talking.
But you know what? Maybe that's what too soon. BAFTA, if you're watching, if you want to sponsor the Northstar boys, we don't want it. But okay, cool. So the BAFTAs on the weekends, and on stage was Delroy Lindo, who very, very famous actor, who's actually from Britain, but then made his chops in America.
I didn't know he was from Britain.
No, he is, yeah. But he obviously he doesn't really identify with Britain that much because he left so early. But he was up on stage presenting with Michael B. Jordan, who...
Because they were both in Sinners as well.
Yeah, both in Sinners, but Michael B. Jordan, African-American actor. And there was a Tourette's activist in the crowd who ended up, I don't even say heckling, because obviously it's unintentional, but literally shout out the N-word.
Yeah.
Along with a couple of other things at them. And they obviously looked very uncomfortable on stage and a bit like, well, what's going on? And then even in the aftermath, they didn't really receive a formal apology from the BAFTAs, nor was it cut out, because obviously they're recorded on a 2-minute delay.
A 2-hour delay.
A 2-hour delay? I thought it was a 2-minute.
No, it's 2 hour.
Even worse. Delay. Producer Tarek, can we get any correspondence? It's like 2-hour delay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Someone was asleep at the wheel. But the reason... So this is independently quite controversial because people are sort of saying there's sort of it needs to be handled in a better way, where this could have been cut out, or is it appropriate? Obviously, to produce some more theoretical questions about like the appropriate intermingling of someone's rights to be disabled in that capacity in the crowd, or there's someone's rights also to not be essentially have a slur hollered at them in public spaces. But then later in the show, Akinola Davis, big up Akinola Davis Jr., whose film My Father's Shadow, which we're all going to go see. Stars them at home, we're all going to go see that. My Father's Shadow has been out and has received a lot of praise. In his acceptance speech, he, for outstanding British debut, he basically said Free Palestine. Uncontroversial statement, just calling to the end to a genocide.
Well, controversial to some.
But obviously the BBC, British Broadcasting Company, quick on the buttons there.
No, can't do that.
Yeah, quick on the buttons there. Cut that out of the official runtime. So they didn't even need that 2-hour delay. They cut out quick.
Yeah.
So I think people have tried to see... There's been it's just a crazy contrast.
I think the best take I've seen, because obviously there's so much discourse around it, was from the influencer and just, I guess I would call her a thought leader, Kelechi.
Yeah.
Where she was just saying that, also Kelechi, if this gets to you somehow, please come on the show.
Yeah,
please.
get on the show, get on the pod.
Was saying that, all right, if the tick was Free Palestine, would it have been cut out?
Yeah.
Perfect question. Yeah. Perfect question. Because
Big
obviously
question.
It would have.
Big question.
And it's just insane how like the BBC can still hold any credibility after all of this.
Yeah.
Because their whole thing is around, okay, neutrality, we need to conduct ourselves properly, etc. Which would be fine if you try to uphold that to a very sort of consistent manner.
As we said on Northstar before, neutrality is not a neutral word.
Yeah, neutrality.
I was picking which other thing. Neutral is not a neutral word, but yeah. I'm not from here. I'm a foreigner. I'm from East London.
Don't let Reform hear that.
But I wanted to bring up a little bit of political philosophy.
Go on then.
Just to indulge ourselves. And so, you know what it is, we even studied this at university. So Stephen Luke's a political theorist. Stephen Luke sets out 3 faces of power. So the first one is decision-making power, which is quite explicit and conflictual. The second one is agenda-setting power. So you basically have the ability to decide what is contested. So that might be like the power, or the reason why we live in a duopoly, because there's only certain options you have on the ballot. And the third one is preference setting or ideological power, which sort of I want to bring up in reference to this example, whereby the BBC is self-censoring itself, not because any sort of political groups or ideological groups have come to them and said that needs to be cut out, but because they're already imbued within them, aware of the power structure within which they exist, that they know, based on whatever Zionist lobbies they might be beholden to, Free Palestine needs to be cut out before it even airs and we have any backlash. Free Palestine needs to be cut out, but someone shouting the N-word doesn't need to be cut out. And the reason why it's even more sort of egregious is because the disability campaigner with Tourette's was so embarrassed, literally unintentional. So an unintentional racial slur, we're not cutting that out. But a now newly and highly celebrated director who's intentionally making a statement, and who you're actually celebrating for his statement-making artwork, that needs to be cut out.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That is deeper-seated ideological power going on there.
No, definitely. And I think the guilt on all of this just needs to be levied at the BBC. I think there was a lot of discourse as well trying to hate on the guy for having Tourette's, when one of the great ironies is that the film that was about his life is to say that you shouldn't need to feel apologetic for your Tourette's. You should be able to live authentically, because obviously by definition it literally is unintentional. And so the BBC, by keeping it in, which was an intentional decision, it must have been an intentional decision, not only basically embarrasses him even further, but then it also just again causes greater harm to the black people in the audience.
Yeah.
It's just such a stinker, man. Like, honestly, like, just keep it like...
Exactly, but I think it's one of those rare but important examples to highlight the hypocrisy and what kind of underpins that, which is sometimes you will see people acting in a certain way to sort of empower one group and disempower another, but it's actually not because there's been any explicit, sort of push to do that. Like, there's been no lobbying going on. This was in real time self-censoring by the BBC on one hand and not on the other hand, because they are aware of the power structure within which they exist.
Also, not to get conspiracy theory-esque, bro... Like the BBC or any television company, their goal, their commercial incentive is to get people to watch.
Exactly.
And I actually genuinely think they probably left, or allegedly, or they could have let this in. One could suppose they left it in to basically just get more clicks afterwards.
Yeah, but the point I'm making as well is like, that's probably true, but black people in the UK don't have the level of power or leverage to be able to contravene that incentive.
No, definitely.
They're not worried about upsetting black people in the UK. So why can you cut that out?
Well, who are they worried about upsetting?
Precisely.
If we speak,
precisely,
big trouble.
They'll call us speakers. Have you got any more topics for the backroads?
I think that's that.
Should we get into the echo chamber?
Let's do it, bro.
Let's do it.
The way I want to bring up this echo chamber is just with a question, and it's, how do you actually stop the commodification of street culture / gang life, if you want to call it that, by big corporations? Because I feel like, actually I was scrolling on Instagram, I saw a great video, and I've got to give credit where it's due to Afi, so that's his name, we'll put it in the description. Okay. He's someone who's from this life, and he's doing a lot of good kind of think pieces.
You got to translate for our non-Londoners. What do you mean by from this life?
I don't know. I get from what I've seen, he's sort of been in prison. Okay. He's from ends. Yeah. Like both of us, even though you kind of want to shake off that. You don't say you're from ends anymore. But he wrote something called Pavement Treaties, and basically he's asking this question: how do we stop the commodification of street culture and gang life by big corporations? Because what we're seeing, and we've seen for a long time now, is that there's increasing fetishization by big corporations of very traumatic experiences that a lot of young people experience growing up in London, whether that be through gang life, trapping, doing just a bunch of illegal stuff, fraud, etc.
What's trapping? for our non-Londoners.
Just selling drugs.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I think that has a really bad and pervasive effect of not only making this life seem cool, but making it seem like some sort of worthy standard that young people should aspire to. Yeah. And I think definitely that growing up in the 2010s, approaching the kind of 2020, this was definitely the trend. And so we sort of glorify for a lot of young people these figures, whether it's rappers or trappers, or whatever you want to call them, that basically they're legitimized by these big corporations when they do their big brand deals or whatever, etc. And then now what's cool, what's the thing to aspire to be or to be, is this kind of image. But actually there's some really insidious economics going on behind the scenes. And he's doing a really good job because he's raising a lot of consciousness about it, a lot of awareness about it. Yeah. But I think as two young people who obviously grew up adjacent to that, in close proximity to it, for me, in my case, I've got a lot of close family members, or not close family members, but close family member friends, etc., who went down that path. And I just knew growing up here, whatever school I went to, I just knew, it can't be me. I actually need to lock in and do my hard work to make sure that's not a reality that I have to face. But I wanted to bring that up to the echo chamber.
Yeah, so I've got so many thoughts on this, because obviously growing up in London, you get so many people that are sort of fetishistic about street life,
I know, it's
crime,
mad.
who really don't need to be going down that route, but really force it. And obviously, so I'm from East London. But I went to school in West London, state school in West London, but a very good state school. It's you come from a good Catholic home if you go into this school. And I remember, there was a couple kids in my school who were from Acton, and they were just really forcing this life, like forcing it, like selling drugs, everything. And they would ask me about my family. I'll tell them a bit about my family, whatever. But then there was never any inkling in me to try and force that, because I got cousins that when obviously I had a lot of problems in life.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's like my cousins want the best for me. And whenever I would chat to my cousins, they would say, like, you're doing your thing. Like, you're sick. You're the coldest. Like, you're playing cello. You like Latin. You love it. Like, and it wasn't like insincere.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself, my cousins want the best for me. And they never once said, yo, let me put you on. Hop off the porch with us.
Yeah.
So there was never, I think people that have that one sort of, they're actually not in communion with people that have had to go through some of these problems.
Yeah.
Who only see the sanitized elements of it from this sort of commercialization.
But not the trauma.
Exactly, precisely. You only see like the glitz and glam. And you know what it is? I can't even blame the drillers and trappers for promoting the glamorous side of it. Because what else are you going to do? That's what everyone does in this life. Me and Sean are here right now.
I feel like you can have some agency though.
No. Because what I'm going to tell you, bro, me and you are sat right here, if people could see like behind the cameras, it's not glitz and glam. But we've got the nice cameras and we're on here, we've got our smiles on.
Our producers' toes are out, everything.
We're trying to put forward our best foot forward.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you're coming from a lifestyle where you have very little to work with, but you know that you're able to buy, because you can't clean this cash, but you're able to buy diamonds, you're able to buy the nice car, you're going to put that on Front Street and try and build whatever you can off that. Put forward this image that you're the trapper of the year and you're a cold rapper or whatever it might be, and build from there. So I actually can't blame sometimes the people that are involved in this lifestyle for doing that. But what I think is going on here...
I think you feel sorry for them. You feel sympathetic to it. But at what point do you actually attribute like the blame for making decisions of practicing something that's quite wrong and glamorizing it in a way that you know it's quite wrong to younger people? Do you know what I mean?
No, so I agree in the sense of... I agree with what you're saying in the sense of... it shouldn't be glamorous, it shouldn't be anything like that. But what I'm saying is on a pure like rationale, I understand why they're doing
if I was
that.
in those
I still think it's wrong though. I still think it's wrong.
If I was in those shoes, I'll probably do the same type of shit.
But what I think is kind of a bigger problem is when we talk about this commodification of street culture, what's really going on here is you're bringing street culture into the public discourse, into the public realm, but as a sanitized product, which means, none of these middle-class people, none of these whoever it might be from the shires ever have to deal with the reality of it, lest there be any sort of change in the material circumstances that brought this about. And I think of it like when they talk about what's it called again? A vaccine. When you put the vaccine in, but it doesn't have the real pathogen, it's just like the chemical markings of it. So you have the chemical markings of like street culture here, and you sell it to people that aren't involved in that life in any way, but in a way that they never have to deal with any sort of material vibes of this.
It's a really good point, because actually while you're speaking about it, I'm actually thinking back to a moment where I was in year 11, just did GCSEs, obviously smashed it. Little nerdy man like me, all A stars and thing. But then I remember I was in Nando's, and then there was a guy there who was one of like the baddest guys in Enzio. He's from my school, 2 years older. And then obviously, like when the older approaches you in it, you gotta just speak in it, because it's just like you can't really say like, nah, I don't want to chat. And he was like, oh, did you do like you did your GCSEs, innit? Because obviously I had this kind of street cred, if you want to call that, for being the smart kid in school. And then he was like, what did you get? And I was like, I just told him, innit, got like my like 12 A stars or whatever. And then he was like to me, listen, I know that I'm cool or whatever, but I'll trade all of this right now for that. And you know what? At that moment does stick with me, because there is an element of we actually can't generalize like these people who are part of this lifestyle, because for a lot of them, it felt like their only route. Where like to actually, because if you're talking about this, the actual kind of raw desire just to survive, and then this education system is not for you, and so you go down this path. Actually, to be fair, maybe I'm softening my position of what I was saying just based on what you were saying, because actually for many people, they don't even want to live that lifestyle. And then it becomes even more insidious when then you see like some youth from the shires just kind of wear the whole aesthetic, but never have to actually deal with the kind of real realities of it.
When we were in Oxford, for university, sometimes I'd be like in and around the town.
How many times has someone come up to you, ask you if you're dealing? That's happened to me.
That happened to me in Oxford, but I mean,
that
happened to me in Tower Hamlets.
Yeah.
Bro, you're thinking like, if you can't find a dealer in Tower
But
Hamlets.
you look like everyone in Tower Hamlets, so it's fine.
But as in, how many times have you been in Oxford and you see like the local teenagers, and they're just doing like, they're play acting like they're from London. But they're play acting a very, obviously Top Boy's got a lot of answering to do here, but they're play acting a certain image of it.
But that's the thing. The thing about Top Boy and the thing about all these big brands is that like there's a sort of self-perpetuating environment where everyone kind of knows this thing is wrong, but because you can make money off it, people continue to make money off it, and then it further perpetuates like this image of it being cool or something to aspire to, where it's like we actually need to try and escape this never-ending cycle.
I think a big part of it, and I think, okay, maybe we can look towards like a solution-based mindset here, is again what I was saying. They're putting forward a sanitized version of what's going on. If we keep on structurally recentering its entirety, its totality, I think that will, if anything, at very least, hopefully, force people that are a bit more empowered within our society to confront the actual detrimental aspects of this. Yeah. And sometimes you do, like, for example, I don't know, maybe the original Top Boy, do you remember on Channel 4?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly, like the actual good one. It did a bit more of that, where you're seeing people going through traumatic experiences, and, you know, remember his mum's going through something, all that kind of stuff. Whereas obviously the new one just looks like a Marvel movie.
What's the guy who burns to death?
Or Kit or something. Yeah. But I think recentering like the totality of what's going on here, when we're obviously the rappers aren't going to do that, but when you're talking about people's stories,
but why can't the rappers do it? You know,
true, and some of them do. But I think some of them do.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah.
But I think that's important because, like, bro, there's things where I remember, like, when I was younger, But one of the guys I grew up with, he was from Newham, but he used to come to our Hamlets for like summer club basically. But I remember the first time I found out what banking was. Bro, that's, you know me, yeah. When they're telling me that, I'm saying, just like that, I know I will never be involved in that. So I think, but even just that kind of thing. Like these kids who they listen to Central C or whatever it might be, they would have no idea what I'm talking about if I said that.
Yeah.
So they haven't had to confront that material reality. So it's cool for them to roll around in their trackies and act like this, that, and the third.
No, definitely.
But when you're confronted with that from a young age, just as like, not even the fact that you're in that life, but just proximity-wise to the reality of it, it's far easier for you to start contesting it.
I think what we're touching on here is like some sort of like how, from a solution-based mindset, is like what's the accountability metric to kind of hold these sort of big corporations to account. And my first instinct, whenever it's a private company who are acting in what is definitely an immoral way, but within the kind of neoliberal framework or moral framework, they're acting as they should be, just protest with your money. Like, actually, let's actually stop investing or like buying all of these new kind of night collabs and this collab and that collab, because really and truly, like, bro, like that's the thing that helps facilitate it. They only care about demand. If there's continues to be demand, they're going to keep supplying. And so there needs to be some sort of like, even like role models in the community need to actually just try and, you know. And
even something I should have probably brought up a bit earlier is obviously, like, you know, I do a lot of stuff in prisons. Like, people of stars that might not even know, but like a few times a year, well, a lot of times a year, I'll be going into prisons. Even I'll be playing 11-side football in like these mad category A prisons against like lifers. And I think one thing I'm always shocked by when I sit down with these lifers, when I'm speaking to people, whoever it might be, is nowhere in this presentation of like the subversive outlaw culture do you ever see the full life cycle. Like, Nike ain't showing you, like the washed up older that's coming out at like 47 and it hasn't got £2 to scrub together, and like the line's gone dead and everything's dead, and the block got gentrified while you're inside. It's like, so they're not sort of promoting this lifestyle in its totality, and it's because they don't care about the people that are part of it in their totality. It's just exploitative in its purest form.
It's extractive. It's exploitative. So yeah, stop buying these brands, people at home.
Facts. I think it's interesting though.
It is very interesting.
Issue, a lot of layers to it.
And as always, stars them. Please leave your opinions below.
So someone in the comments last week, do you see that was like, he doesn't like it when we wrap up with like stars them, tell us what you think.
No, but that's what you should do. And we can't talk forever, so.
And also sometimes, like, what you might not see is Tarek having a seizure behind the camera, saying we need to wrap up,
he's wiggling his toes to tell us stop.
But no, I think that's an interesting topic to bring to the table. And I will be interested to see what the stars them think.
Please, let us know.
Let's leave it there. Episode 20.
20 is a big number, you know. We actually need to do a little celebration soon.
Who's going to organise that?
In-person event. In-person event.
We've been teasing this one for the longest, but we're reaching flow state with these episodes.
Come on now.
To make it out to East London.
Obviously Tarek doesn't think that, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like... but I want to leave the stars... Oh, stars them as well. Second episode this week, you know. Surprise. But for those of you who stayed this long, you deserve it. We're going to be doing a Q&A later in the week. There'll be vocals only. Just bare ginger and lemon this week.
Today my throat was gone. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to just keep up. But
we're going to be doing it audio only on Spotify and Apple Music. So head to Spotify, Apple Music, follow us there so you can see that Q&A later in the week.
We're so self-entitled that we think you just want to hear more about us. So
also, people send in a lot of questions. So I've been collating them. But also follow our socials so that you can, when we put out the call for questions, if you want to send anything, you can send it in.
Yeah.
Anything that people should keep an eye out for?
We are going to upload a little mini doc soon. Come into the Northstar channel. The irony is I was wearing a Trap Star whole tracksuit throughout the entire thing, which obviously that echo chamber is just null and void right now. But was really kind of proud of what we did, and we want to do more things like that. So stay tuned for that. It will come out sometime. In
Any recommendations for the people then?
Not really. I mean, just pre my own social media.
You've been putting out some good TikToks.
Yeah. I'm doing a lot of thinking around Ramadan, spirituality, just all types of esotericism. Is that
I saw you struggling with it, but
I
one more time. Almost got it.
Spirituality. That's what I'll just say. Just in case I mess it up again. What about you?
Me, stars them will be in this algorithm, some of them. But FD Signifier put out the long-awaited like Tyler Perry documentary. He's a really good video essayist online. Yeah, and I didn't even know that much about Tyler Perry, but he's been cooking this one up for years. So me, obviously, like no social life, whatever you want to call it, watched it first day, 4 hours, boom, boom, bow. But I thought that was decent. Anything else I've been preying? Probably loads of stuff, but we can never really remember.
Listen, we're actually going to be at a couple in-person events.
We've got in-person events coming up as well.
So just look out for that. Please come through. And also next week, big guest. You thought we were going to do that. We're back.
This for the people that are late in the day. They're still watching this one episode. You know what we didn't even do this episode? We didn't say go to like northstarpolitics.com
/support.
We didn't even tell people like and subscribe. So if you made it this far, you've got to like, subscribe. One thing we never told people to do, bell notification on.
Yep.
All that kind of good stuff.
Please do. But we'll be back next week. Take it easy. See you soon.